So what kind of property should you be investing in? Here in front of a commercial building, right over there's a shopping center, right over there are apartment buildings, right over there's all kinds of single family homes, storage units, it's all over the place here. Which should you choose? Well, let's talk about that right now. So what type of real estate should you invest in? Well, people ask me that question all the time because there are so many ways to invest in real estate, and I always give them the exact same answer. So there are many different ways to invest, and we want to look for cash flow properties. That's why I don't invest in land, vacant land, because it's expensive to pay the taxes, etc. But I want to have cash flow properties such as apartment buildings, commercial retail space, office buildings, shopping centers, vacation homes, or industrial warehouse buildings, something that produces a cash flow. So what's my favorite type of cash flow real estate? Houses and apartment buildings, residential property. So why? Why residential? There are three advantages to homes and apartment buildings. They've always been this way and they always will be this way. This is why this is my favorite. Advantage number one, large market. There's a sizable pool of homes and residential apartment buildings that are available in urban settings. So the bigger the city, the more properties are available. So why do I tell people to go into residential first? It's because we're used to it. We live in homes, apartments, townhomes. We've been doing this for our entire lives. So owning that is just a next step up. So that's exactly what we're looking for here. Now, remember, to find a highly motivated seller, I'm looking for 1%, a tiny, tiny percentage of the available properties. Most sellers are not flexible. They want their price, they want their terms. So the 1% is a very important number, because if it's a bigger city, that 1% is bigger. Therefore, the probability of you finding that one property you need is much, much higher. So that's why having a large market is important. Number two, the volume of sales. The volume of sales of residential properties is much higher than for commercial properties. Why is that important? This makes it much easier for you to determine the market value of the house or apartment building, so you know when a true bargain comes on the marketplace. So what does that really mean? That means that when you buy a property, you want to find out what its value is, don't you? You want to have an appraiser come and appraise it. Well, if it's a residential property, there'll be lots of current comps, properties that have sold recently, so you can get exactly what its current market value is. When it comes to commercial real estate, there are not as many comps. There are not as many properties that an appraiser can look at to determine what its actual current market value is. Therefore, we want a volume of sales, especially when it comes to residential, because we now can determine exactly what that property is worth. And if we want to flip it to somebody else at a higher price, we know what the market is, and we can tell whether or not its value is really what we bought it for, right? Number three, loans. It's easier to obtain a mortgage loan or get other financial help in purchasing a residential property. Lenders generally see the risk as lower than in buying an office building, shopping center, or warehouse, and are more likely to approve your mortgage. Millions of properties will be sold this year and refinanced through mortgage brokers. There are so many residential mortgage brokers that usually one of them will help you solve the problem when you go get that mortgage. But when it comes to commercial real estate, the volume of mortgages is much, much, much lower, and the qualifications for those mortgages much, much, much higher. Do you know the real reason? Because the government wants you to buy a house. They want to make it easy for you, but they don't care about commercial properties. They want residential properties. Therefore, there's all kinds of low or no money down opportunities available through the government. And therefore, that's why I like to start there as an investor in the residential arena, because there's so many, at least three fundamental advantages for doing so. Residential doesn't have to be your final destination. A lot of people come to me and they say, I don't like apartment buildings. I have to deal with tenants. I don't want that. Is there another opportunity? Well, if you're a beginner, I recommend you start with residential. However, you can go deeper in residential, buy more apartments, 100 units, 200 units, 500 units. You can go deeper if you want to, but rich people, they go wider. They actually get into commercial building. And the best thing for you to ultimately, maybe down the road, 10 years from now, you're going to go into what we call triple net lease. Triple net lease is where you buy a building, a commercial building, and your tenant is the best tenant on the planet. A huge multinational corporation with billions of dollars worth of revenue, and they pay the taxes, the upkeep, they pay all the expenses. That's why they call it triple net lease. That means the investor, the owner, just gets a check, and they don't have to manage it, they don't have to take care of it at all. Now, when you go back to residential, think about those tenants. Unfortunately, these are the worst tenants on the planet. And you've been there, I've been there, we've all rented apartment buildings before, but eventually we can hire a management company to take care of these lower quality tenants. But I think ultimately, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, triple net lease, or all kinds of other real estate that you want. But real estate just for beginners. Just get started there, and then the world is yours. Buy whole bunches of it, and have a great time doing it. You know, the advantage of being a best-selling author for 30 or 40 years is that you get to see your students that read your book 30 or 40 years ago, and you get to see where they are today. And just in this last week, I've had 2 of my very, very successful students who went from residential first to commercial buildings and into triple net lease. They own hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate. And what's so humbling for me personally is I get to hear these success stories, how their lives are dramatically changed. So if you just start with the steps I teach you here, start with residential, then you can go anywhere you want. And I want to hear your success story. That's what motivates me. You ask me why I do this. Because when I hear a success story like I just explained to you, and I've heard thousands of them, it just makes me feel like my life is worth living, that my purpose in life is to help you succeed. This is why I live. This is why I breathe. And so use this information. Do you want more success stories of people who really did this? Not just me and my story, but the challenge talks about 3 people from an unemployment line. It gives you no excuse. When you read this book and you say to yourself, well, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, my spouse doesn't want to help me, whatever excuse you're using, this book will blow them all away. Because when you read this book and understand these success stories, you realize that people can come from zero, nothing, way down, and they can make success happen. So click on the link, read the book, and make it happen for yourself. No more excuses. It took me 50 years to learn this stuff, and I'm still learning. But you need to learn the fundamentals, the basics. And so I want you to subscribe to this channel, because you can learn in 5 hours what took me 50 hours to figure out. And it's going to save you so much trouble, so much pain, so much loss, and take you right to success as quickly as possible. So don't forget to subscribe and watch the next video. See you there.